political economy is about commodities. It's about what's being sold. And in a sponsored content space, what's being sold is trust. So it actually takes this thing that feels very like interpersonal, and that's the most valuable thing. My name's Steph Hill, and I'm a PhD candidate in the Joint Graduate Program for Communication and Culture at Ryerson and also York Universities.
And I'm Jeremy Shtern. I'm Associate Professor of Creative Industries at Ryerson University in Toronto.
Our chapter focuses on the sponsorship model of content creation. So we did about 50 interviews with social media creators about their relationship to their audience and to sponsored content. And then our chapter actually puts that in historical context. So looking at what the sponsorship model looked like in the 1930s and the 1950s and how regulators and advertisers responded to it at those different times. If you look back at the 1930s, you had really heavy sponsor involvement in the creation of TV shows and radio shows. And then you see it again in the 1950s when you have the quiz show scandal where they were rigging game shows, basically to support the sponsor's idea of what the best show would be, and you get this huge crisis in consumer trust. And that's when you get kind of a wake-up call in terms of regulation and things like that, because as soon as consumers don't trust a medium, as soon as it seems like sponsors are kind of calling all of the shots, the actual value of the medium starts to bottom out.
For people, my age, advertising is a separate little 30-second movie that happens in the middle of the 22-minute movie. And we get the sense that shows have to attract audiences, but maybe not that the advertisers are actually the ones who are telling the story or having editorial involvement in how the story is being told. The creator culture is much more, I think, intimately linked, the relationship between the advertising money that sponsors and supports the work of content creators. There have been times where content creators, and in particular the producers, have flown too close to the sun in allowing the advertisers to influence the content and to manufacture authenticity. They've required the performance of authenticity on the part of creators, and audiences have seen through that and revolted against that. And that I think that history is important for everyone in the social media entertainment industry right now to appreciate.
For how it looks today, it's weird because today we have all of it at the same time. And sometimes it feels like you're getting like the best of both, and sometimes it feels like you're getting the worst of both. Because you get the good sponsored content that sort of makes sense, and it's like, oh, I play video games and here's a video game and it all lines up. And then you see these really onerous brand safety standards being enforced by advertisers that are just demonetizing content that goes anywhere close to the line.
I made a couple videos dedicated to talking about like sexual experiences and like dating advice and like losing my virginity and real shit that happens, and those videos always get demonetized, even though in YouTube's guidelines they say that if you talk about sex in an educational way, you're supposed to be able to be monetized.
And then at the same time, instead of just like a few advertising slots, you're getting the programmatic advertising universe where they're placing ads across the entire internet automatically, and then that's funding basically all the worst things on the web. You're kind of seeing both the pitfalls of the sponsorship model and this kind of overstep of the placed advertising model that both pose different kinds of risks and need to be addressed separately, I think.
I think the crucial thing for people who are in this space and are interested in creator culture is to think about the power relations between individual creators and the advertisers. And in our chapter we point out that the idea of soap operas came because Johnson & Johnson used to create content on television, and they had their own production studio. And at this point we're seeing a lot of influence work being companies that are brands that aren't really media publishers or producers reaching out to individual content creators to ask them to tell stories that involve their brand or about their brand. And if it works, and I think it does, and it works well, what's to stop them from going further and investing in this and basically looking to create their own publishing and production wings as brands rather than trying to reach out to work with the individual influencer. So that's one thing I would say. I mean, I think it's really important that creators continue to tell their own stories and develop their own voices and think about how much sponsorship and what kind of sponsorship. Like at a certain point, maybe you're valuable because you don't work only for Johnson & Johnson. And you have to find a way to double down on telling your own stories and doing some content that's really, really authentic.
Taking a political economy approach lets us think first and foremost in terms of power. It lets you think in terms of policy and the public interest, and it lets you look at this culture around creation and go, well, who's succeeding and what's helping them succeed? And are those structures supporting people equally, or are there other people, other kinds of content that aren't being supported? Political economy is about commodities. It's about what's being sold. And in a sponsored content space, what's being sold is trust. So it actually takes this thing that feels very interpersonal and difficult to define, and that's the most valuable thing in this media space. And looking at the market for trust and how that shapes who succeeds, what's able to make money in this space, I thought was really important. I'm studying the professional communication industry, including advertising, and its definitions of brand safety and how it's navigating crises around deplatforming or platforming certain voices, and how the reactions to those controversies and those crises shape the governance of online content or how content is moderated online.
I'm really interested in how content gets made, but also infrastructure gets built on social media and on digital platforms, and what that means for thinking about the politics and some of the public interests. Influencers and creators, culture in particular, is a really important tip of the spear, because I think it's where it's really gone the farthest, where you see the greatest integration of sponsorship and advertising into the ways in which platforms are monetized and communication, specific stories and specific messages are monetized.